So we aimed to start controversy last week, and to learn what it is that makes women's hierarchies or whatever it is. I've seen various new models of what to describe it. I mean, men make hierarchies and make pyramids, and they have a, basic sense of climbing up to the top and things like that. And women, I mean, we can deny quite typically that there is such a thing as the pyramid and the hierarchy because, women are not hierarchical and stuff. But we know that we exist in very fraught relationships with each other, which do have a sense of control and influence and inside outside. I think the most interesting model that I've seen suggested is we're sort of like planets around the sun, which fits excellently with what we've been playing with in Dragon Common Room, where we are now getting close to finishing Act 2 and promising that we will have illustrations and additions and such later on in the year, which is all, the scene is all revolving around, if you've read Act 1 yet, our queen character and the way in which she creates a kind of court dynamic. So as you can imagine, in DCR, we've been thinking a lot about these relationships, and I say they're power relationships, but they're more subtle and frustrating than simply dominance or submission. I mean, it's like no woman will ever submit to another woman. Forget it. It's not going to happen, right? So we realize here in the Mosaic Ark that we need to keep wrestling with this problem, bringing you yet again some meditations through Barbie. But we're going to have to break it down into some specific subsets of problems. And tonight, we are going to think about men's spaces and women's spaces and whether women belong in men's spaces and vice versa. Welcome to Barbie's Mojo Dojo Casa Dreamhouse, Take 2. So we're wondering, it's like, is this a super challenging topic or what?
Yeah. Apparently it is.
Well, we've had a variety of responses in my Telegram chat over the last few days, and some things that have proven our diagnosis of women's relationships quite accurately, I think, and reinforced the lessons that we've learned from Hypergamouse for sure. We've met some real life versions of those characters. In the long run, I'm seriously hoping we can get Lacey to come on and talk to us about her drawings and the story that she and Vox are working on. My dog is having a stressful time in the corner here. You got yourself trapped. What's going on? Okay. Which house that he should be belonging in and under whose chair, and come on out, you silly. Yeah, so I'm feeling a little fraught, right? It's like after the great explosive realization of we exist in courts and being responsible for courts. I realized that. Okay, so this is, I'll say, from our conversation last week, the single most important thing I've come away with, and I don't want to spoil this because I do think we need to like do a dedicated whole stream to it, but I'm just gonna to say it is, ladies, it's your responsibility to form courts. Right. And I've been thinking about that a lot, in the way in which, if you want to understand where women's hierarchy develops out of, it's not going to be as overt as, let's go out back and fisticuffs it up. Right. There's going to be more subtle relationships and cues and such. And ladies, if you're out there and you're watching and you want to help us, start making notes on the moments of these sorts of interactions. But I started realizing that whenever two women come together in any kind of social situation, it's like dogs in the dog park, which is why my dog under my chair now is actually helpful. There's a whole sorts of very definite but subtle kind of invitations and cues, and the hardest one for all women to take when they get in that moment is to I say this correctly, to be gracious to each other. And I've realized that it's in that little moment of you both have a chance to acknowledge the other woman, and out of that can flower lovely conversations and relationships. But if you don't do it in that little, there's like this, it's not even it's not in time, right? It's in eternity for women, but it's in this very subtle interaction that you have at first. It's hard to recover from. And I'm starting to have my theory of queens is they're really good at that first moment. Does that make sense? Does that describe something real?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It does. The introduction is a big deal. That makes sense. Everything.
And there's this there's also this way of how one woman introduces another woman to a group, or the hostessing is all just so precise and charged. Now the thing is, my guess is men are doing this too in their own way with each other, and women may or may not be picking up all the cues that are happening there. But guys, we can guarantee you that every woman, having walked into a room, knows her rank and relationship with every other woman in the room in about a millisecond. Am I wrong? Yeah.
No,
it's everything,
no.
Right? It's like, and so I actually have our images to start with. Whoops, I would have our images. Where'd they go? Ha! I killed my own startup. Oh, I had a better image and it's gone now. Oh, I know why, because I renamed it. How hilarious. Okay, just a second. I can go back. See, I blew my entrance. And the thing is, how appropriate is that for the point I wanted to make? That's absolutely hilarious. Okay, carry on, talk, save me, please.
I'm laughing because it's almost like you would have done it on purpose.
No, I didn't. I know what I did. So what it was no, wait, I got to redo it again. I can tell you what I'm doing now.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's see if that worked, right? Okay, so I asked Kilts to give me some pictures. Nope, didn't work. Okay, and she found all of the pictures for Barbie, right? And I put them in to... It's not there, darn it. Okay, I put them into the stack in OBS that I draw off of, and I renamed one of them because I was trying to make them all nicely in order. And when I renamed it, I threw it out of the stack. I'm going to fix this now because I care about you guys.
It's been thrown out of stack court.
It's been thrown out of stack court, and I what is it called?
What you said is correct.
Yeah, save me here. Come on, help.
Okay, but the hostesses can make or break somebody's introduction to a court by their introduction.
As I'm doing right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because I've got different examples in my mind of how this has worked for me in the past.
Yeah.
And
there, I've got the entry now. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, it's finally here.
I have, by way of my tech nitwittery, proved my point perfectly, right? Okay.
Yeah. Well, reduction of the hostess that defines the entrance to court. That definition basically signals to everybody in the court what the status of the person being introduced is.
Yes.
So how they do it essentially is their moment of being granted status, and it sticks. Yeah. And so if you have a good hostess, they'll highlight lovely things about you, and if you have a bad hostess, they will subtly, and sometimes in some cases not subtly, highlight things about you that are intended to degrade your standing with the rest of the court.
Instantly and immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's, I think I was thinking about what we learned about Bridgerton in the court. And then, I mean, the whole point of Bridgerton is it's all Queen Charlotte, who is not beautiful, right? And the way they portrayed her with her costumes and the television shows, they're ridiculous, right? But I mean, the whole plot revolves around her picking her diamond for the year, right? Who's going to be the one that, because she says this is my chosen one for the season, that will be the one who's, theoretically, for the point of the plot, that everyone is going to be paying attention to. But that is the way hostessing works, right? It's like, so what I also realized in all of this is it's my fault if I don't have any feeling of being in the midst of a court. It's like I have to create mine. And I used to do it. My husband and I used to do for like a decade. We have a big Mardi Gras party every year for Pancake Day, Fat Tuesday Pancake Day. Although we tended to do it on Sundays because more people could come, and it got too big for our home. Right, it was like 100 people for pancakes for the evening, and one, I loved it, and two, I realized it wasn't just fun for me. It was kind of my responsibility. It's like, if I wanted to have a sense that there was a community around us in this neighborhood, nobody else was going to make it, right? I'm sort of thinking about the way Vox has been saying, the whatever world we're in right now, right, conservative, Christian. The labels aren't working, guys, but that the influencers in our orbit of conversation don't tend to help each other. Okay, guys, that's your problem. But for women, it's like it is actually a responsibility to perform your hostess duties, right? And there's the Bridgerton. They show this every so often. It's like there's one time when they throw a party and nobody comes because everybody's shunning them and stuff. So there's a certain degree of risk in having an event and worrying about whether anybody comes. But it's not like I'm stuttering on this. It's not like it's just you as hostess making yourself the center of attention, which you could do, and then that's one kind of event, right? But it's you as hostess creating the opportunity so that all of those other people could come together and have a nice day, a nice evening, and that is actually, and my southernness is sort of powerfully sparking here. That is actually your responsibility as a woman to create those kinds of events. Right? Ooh, wait.
Okay.
Which is kind of, I mean, it's like nice and terrifying at the same time, right? It's way easier to sit around and say, oh, I don't, I'm just sitting here, by myself and my cat, and, nothing's happening. It's like, well, do something, have a party, right? Create the event, and you have to, and like Barbie is doing that in the picture that I finally found. It's that she at the center of Barbie Land is the one whose responsibility it is to be the one who leads the whole community in tone, right? And we talked about that last time, but I started reflecting on it as more of a an action item, that it's something that women actually are responsible for doing in our community. Now that did,
yeah, but I don't. The Barbies can host.
Okay. Maybe I'm more of a queen than I realized. To find this.
You think?
No, I don't. See, this is the thing. I don't think of myself as the queen that organizes all the society stuff. But then I started thinking, wait a minute. Nobody else is doing it. Darn it.
Yeah, well, not everybody can do it. Not everybody makes a good hostess. I'm not a hostess.
I'm not going to convince you to have a big party.
No. No.
Okay, so that
I go to the party. I'm not the hostess of the party. That's never been my role. And I've enjoyed being at the parties, and I think I've just, after our last stream, just definitely understood my role as a Sigma female.
Okay, so you really are Weird Barbie, and I have to be Barbie in this particular subset. Oh, dear.
Yeah. No, I mean, tracking like social trend over the decades. No, I'm not the hostess. I like to be at the party. I just don't like to be the host.
Well, okay, so hostess Barbie needs guests for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, hostess Barbie needs guests. She needs help hosting.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it's a completely different role to be the hostess. You're actively working on knitting everybody together to make sure that they're having a good time.
Right.
And thinking about who works well with who, and having this kind of I mean, it's really what little girls do when they've got Barbie dolls. They sit them around together and have them talking in a circle, and they figure out which doll's going to go with the other doll and who will suit best sitting next to the other one. And it's like putting placement cards at a table, trying to make sure that
she claims not to know how to do this.
No, I don't.
You just described it.
Never been in that. Yeah, because I'm observant. I'm just an observant person. I go, oh yeah, that's what you're doing. Nice. I'm not doing it. The moments of hosting that I've had in life has been kind of accidental, where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing this now. But it's never been a conscious thing where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be the hostess today.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like I have done it, and I realize, I tend to think of my teaching in my classes, since at Chicago, University of Chicago, we do a lot of our classes by discussion section, which effectively means me at a table with a lot of people around it. And the thing is, in that context, it's not a dinner party. You can't because indeed in a class, you're expected to keep a general conversation going that has a point. I do actually typically have a point that I'm trying to get to, right? Whereas in a more social table setting, you're allowing the smaller conversations to develop, and then there's a general conversation. It's it flows in and out of the full group. But I do actually, I mean, from the size of a table of people to 100 people, I love it whichever way. right? And then realizing that it is actually more of that in a female role, as opposed to, I don't like a lecturing role quite so much, because I don't like that I can't tell whether people are following what I'm pointing to and such. I like, the sense of getting some feedback. And I don't know whether it's a more masculine thing or a more feminine thing to lecture or not, but I do know that my default as a teacher is this, what I'm now recognizing, a kind of hostessing model. So,
which is fun.
It's enormous fun. The thing is, but the what people will wonder is, it's like, knowing yourself as hostess does not mean, one, if you go to some other person's party, another woman's party, you don't take over, right? It's like, you acknowledge that's her house, right? And so we're in the Barbie house, the Barbie Dreamhouse, right? And it's like, she and her house is hostess, and you do not, heaven forbid, usurp her hostessing role in her own house. If you do that, you have made a move that you better be pretty conscious of. Because it's either incredibly aggressive or, there's only, it's like, if she's, it's like, thinking about it, it's like she's failing or something at being hostess and stuff, you can't help her. There's horribly no way out, because Barbie in her dream house, which we can go to now, right? The house in the movie that is her house, it matters that it's her house, like, on all levels. And it's very interesting in the first, act, what you get at the end of that is a party, right? That, she's the center of, but the whole town is her house, in a sense of hostessing.
Yeah. It's the Barbie fractal. But they've all got a good time, because she's making sure everything is done properly. I think that's the point of her saying she's thinking about death and the music stops, is that when the hostess is not functioning correctly, right. Then no one else is able to have a good time either.
And that and then in the movie, she, the character recognizes it. Oh no, I have it. Yes. So it's a responsibility and a kindness to take that sort of centering role on, and because she takes it on, they all know what they're supposed to be doing. It's very important. Yes. Okay, so we've established that women need spaces in which to be hostess. I can take a little bit further onto the, like, so I accidentally realized that I do have that character. Darn it. I thought it was a Sigma outsider. Yeah. I'm not. Oh my gosh. Because the thing is, I don't feel.
I could have told you that.
Sorry. I don't feel. I mean, nothing in my psychosocial makeup has ever suggested to me that I play the beauty pretty one. Right. It's like the her. Right. I wanted to do that, and I've gone back to Barbie as a welcomer. I used to draw pictures when I was growing up of being sort of transformed from like sort of Cinderella things. And this at the age when I was playing with my Barbies too, right? That you go from girl in rags, like literally in my drawings, right? To the fairy godmother comes along and, teaches her how to dress up, and then she's the princess, right? And I was also thinking about this with the sense that, well, can't every woman be transformed into that? I mean, that's the idea of you're married in the sort of canonical vision of things, right? You get married, you have your own house, and therefore you perform in your own house those hostessing roles for the people that come to you as guests. And therefore, because there's lots of houses, like in the Barbie world, in the Barbie town, there's each woman has her own house. So can't you learn to be this? Is this, and this being like in the sociosexual hierarchy question, Vox says the men's are situational, which does mean you can be in one situation and be alpha and in another situation not. So it's not like my saying, like, I will always show up and be hostessing. Although I do have this horrible propensity in conversations to be able to like tap them and generate particular kinds of active like cool engagement.
Kind of like a Barbie.
I just thought I was good at leading discussion.
She's in denial.
I'm in massive denial. I'm in so much denial. I do not want to. Can't everybody learn this? I mean, this my entire career has been based on this idea that I could train people to do this.
I don't want to say no straight up. I have to think about it, whether or not it's possible.
Well, but this, I mean, this being a problem, because everyone would say, well, okay, so we've started with the women's, the women's hierarchy is subtle, which comes out in this ability to elevate or, destroy in a social situation. Right.
Yes.
And that some women do seem to be, I actually do have very specific people in mind and saying, gosh, she is so good at this, right? It's like she walks in a room, everyone feels happier and more comfortable. She smiles in this way. It's not controlling in any way. It's just soothing. And if that person is there, the whole group feels happier. It's wonderful. It's sort of magical. Whereas this other person is there, everything gets jangled and it doesn't matter. It's like you can be constantly deferring to her and it doesn't make any difference. It all stays jangly and awful. Are those, it's like, the degree to which it's situational, learned, and your own character. Can't we get better at being the Barbie? Please say yes. Oh, so sad.
I'm thinking of examples. I mean, can we get taller? I don't know. I don't know. You're asking, I'm like probably the worst person on the planet to be asking this question. Because I've observed it so much and I can see the natural hosting, like, my bungling into social situations, being weird Barbie and thinking, oh great, I'm here to just have a great time, and then realize that I'm weird Barbie in that situation. So it took me a long time to figure out, like, I wasn't blending in particular courts very easily.
Right.
And it's not because of acts of sabotage. It's just, if you're odd, it's like, okay, that's fine. But then after a while, realizing, well, maybe it's just because I'm in the wrong courts. And sometimes that's what it is too.
Yeah.
You're just in the wrong space. And then sometimes it's that you just have hit a bad run of bad hostesses. Then you get a good hostess. You realize, oh, this is fantastic. So it's, but everyone does get a chance to play hostess, but I think it just comes naturally to certain people, and some women are phenomenal at it and others have to make a real conscious effort when they're doing it. It doesn't come naturally to them. And going through my example list now, they're not going to become the Barbie that hosts the party that everybody has a fabulous time at.
Well, the thing is, I think that people can, this is where the sort of anxiety plays out, right? Because I can think of plenty of parties that I hosted that like crashed and burned horribly. So that's also there's some element there. It's like I said, there's a risk in setting stuff up that it might not work, and so the hostessing is actually quite anxious making, or so there's no. And Bridgerton was playing that out too. It's like I've only watched it once through, and I don't remember why. There's this scene where they're trying to have a party. They've decorated the house, and because they've been cut from the social setup, nobody comes, right? So and that's at like some other hostess has killed their hostessing. That there's maybe we're going to have to have a nested, set of Barbie houses. Right? There's the core Barbie house, which has satellite Barbie houses, which has yet more satellite Barbie houses.
Well, the courts also fight for members of courts. They pilfer from other courts.
Right.
People are stealing. Like that happens.
Yes, she's
Or
hosting a party, and I have it on the same day as my party, and then you end up in these direct rivalries, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, in fact, the way women play out rivalries a lot, isn't it? Have some event that conflicts with this other event that they shouldn't conflict, and you're clearly actually trying to draw on the same. It's called scheduling your classes against each other in academia. Which to a certain extent, you're always, there's only so many hours in a day and slots, and people like teaching certain ones, and so you conflict. But there's a kind of courtesy to make sure that her party isn't conflicting with yours, so that the same students can take the class. Yeah, this is working pretty terrifyingly well.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a sad example. A girl I know party, and her friends didn't even arrive. It was really horrible.
Oh.
And I didn't understand it at the time.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it's because her friends were probably very jealous of her, and they just decided not to come. And and I was there, and I brought some friends of mine, so she ended up having a crowd, which was good. But it's it's very sticky. The politics of hosting. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the opening frame, which I think we probably have more to think about. It's that we had, that Barbie is shown doing her own like self-care things in her house, and the setup in the movie is like, well, she gets her own house because that's where she is her private self. But I like that what we've added here is that it's not women need their own home, not just to have their own private toiletry space, right? It's like where you take your shower and where you eat and get dressed and things like that. But this, right?
It's like the meme with the guys who just have an empty room and there's a mattress on the vision with a game like thing machine.
Yeah.
I can't speak. They're content like this because they don't need to do the hosting in their home.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the feeling for women is, I can you can say in the comments what you think, like and subscribe, please, because we're going to have a party. That the dynamics of what home is are very, very powerful for women. And back when I was in a different social set, and we were doing Three Creators Symposium, which unfortunately the videos are down from YouTube right now, so I can't point you to these, but we did a couple of videos with a man who was rehabbing houses, and we were specifically talking about he had this thing about how his grandmother's house always felt special to him, and that there was this whole meditation that we had on when you think of women like your mom or your grandmother and stuff, you put them in the home that you think of them in too, right? The sort of woman in house symbiote. Right?
The house is for our structure, where the external is part of this structure.
Do we have a word for it?
All right. Yeah, we did. It's like the monocoque, like that egg. It's like basically if a car has the external shell that includes the chassis, like that actually is part of the mechanical structure of the car. It's not just an external thing to make it pretty. It actually has a functional thing.
Right.
That's what the house is for a woman. Yeah. It's the body of the car with the chassis. Like if a woman doesn't have a house, she's just not driving. She's not. It's the home like of a woman. I know what you're describing. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of these things go into, and they portrayed it quite well. Now Barbie's getting in her pink car by flying down. they portrayed it very well that, you know, she identifies, it's not just that she has a house where she happens to sleep, but that she identifies with it as her house, and that's her dream house, and all these dream houses belong to the Barbies, and that what they're dreaming, I mean, the first thing we have is that party. So what they're dreaming is that ability to, you know, what did not just express themselves through the stuff that's in their home. It's not materialistic as such, right? It's a setting for her beauty, which, ladies, if you're you know, if you're in your home decorating, pick colors that you know, go with your skin. Right, that you are decorating it so that it's a setting for you in your hostessing situation, and that I mean, it can feel quite awful to have that invaded by people who mess it up or aren't invited, or turn it into guy place like these guys did. Mm-hmm. Right. Which has on the internet, yes, you know, created an awful lot, like all of the so much of the discussion of being around, like, he took over her house and turned it into the Kendom saloon, and the guys are there, mm-hmm, you know, filling it with horsey stuff, because men are, patriarchy means horses.
Yeah.
Now, you actually, what's interesting in our discussions about this, you actually had a stronger reaction to his taking over her house than I did.
Oh, I was instantly infuriated by it, and everybody was cheering it on. Oh yeah, she deserved it because she's a big B, big Barbie. She's a big B, and you know, she treated him horribly, and she wouldn't like go and have a sleepover. So he, you know, she deserves it. Actually, she was really virtuous. She told someone who wanted to have out of wedlock sleepover to go like away very kindly, and then he returned that by taking over her dream house. It's horrible. She was so cute and virtuous, and she got treated so badly. Anyway, I responded really badly to it. Because he disrespected her space and took over and turned it into a frat house, which wasn't about hosting and social bonds. It was about
well, but no, it is about his social bonds. Yeah.
Which kind?
Okay, so I was actually I liked the Ken house.
Yeah.
And therefore the thing is, I was very interested. Like, we've just built up this whole thing. It's like hostessing, and it's yours, and but I liked it when the guys were there, right? And Kilts is going, no.
Well, because it wasn't his home. He wasn't hosting in his home. He was hosting in a stolen home, so I couldn't get over that.
No, I know. And the thing is, I know you told me that, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I'm like, no, but I still like it. So I want to think about this a bit more, because it's like it was her space in absolutely every significant, important way. It matches her. It's beautiful for her. It's where she takes care of herself. It's where she hostesses and has the parties, which everybody feels happy in because she's feeling happy. And then he comes back having decided that, you know, patriarchy needs to happen, and fills it with horses.
Yeah. Which is still cool. I mean,
and I'm just enjoying his, you know, feeling of, that he hadn't had a home. I mean, I'm identifying too much with him, I guess, right? That he lived on the beach, basically. Where did the kids sleep? Who knows, right?
Yeah, I know.
They had none of their own. They had no houses. Don't men get houses, right? Yeah. I'm trying to trigger you. Come on.
If they don't steal them,
they go and steal. Well, that is the way, you know, the feminist argument tends to go, right? It's like men just, you know, they want to. Well, actually, no. This kind of backfires, because they come in and they transform it and to make it into their own thing that they like. They don't. They do have the Barbies making them sandwiches, I guess, and kind of bringing them beers and stuff. But
Ken didn't build his own house. I'm going to die saying that.
I want you to
He
say
didn't
it.
build his own house. So
What did he
it
do
wasn't Ken's
wrong?
house. He got... He just didn't build his own house.
Okay, but you know the first thing he says to her when she comes back and she's like, "You took my house. What did you do to my house?" And he says, "How you know, how does that feel?" Right? Now you don't have a house. I didn't have a house and now you don't have a house. How does that feel? Got my Ken specs on. How does that feel? I mean, she's, and, you know, there I'm just sympathizing with the men, saying it's like the women have created these, you know, beautiful, perfect spaces that they won't let the men live in because they're so female, the houses.
Oh, that's the... Oh, okay, now I understand what you mean. So you're looking at it from the perspective of the boys not being able to share the space.
Yes.
I wasn't looking at it like that at all.
Which I found interesting, right? Because I have actually been in situations in my life observing a woman have so much control over her house that even when she's married, he has like a box in the back room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that, but I've seen the opposite too, where Barbie lives in Barbie's dream house, but it's full of horse stuff. But that's just about people working out they're sharing a space together.
Is that all it is?
Yeah,
well, no, okay, so I mean that's one of the things. It's like the Barbie dream houses. I'm gonna get her. I'm gonna get her to like unpack this with me. I mean, one of the things that the Barbie dream houses are is that like they're single, not even single family homes, right? They're single woman homes.
Yeah.
There's only one per house, right? There's not even roommates of Barbies having to deal with how do you know, share a domestic space. They wave at each other from, you know, across the street. So you never have that, you know, challenge of who gets the bathroom. No.
No, it's the pure fantasy of when a little girl thinks about her dream house. That's all it is. It's the pure fantasy of being in complete creative directive control of a home. Without anyone else living inside it with you, or
you don't have to agree with your roommate about the you know, the pictures on the wall over the sofa and stuff.
Yeah. There's nothing. It's just it belongs to you, and therefore you get to do whatever you want in there, and it's fine. And then, but that's a fictional little environment that is not actually how anybody lives. Nobody lives like that. This is
apparently a lot of
fantasy of
young adults live alone.
Oh. Okay. Well,
apparently. I mean, I never have. It's like, well, no. When I had a single in college in my senior year for a few months, and then I moved in with my friends, I almost never in my life lived alone.
So you've never had a Barbie dream house complete monopoly over a space experience.
That single. Oh, so the single, and then what? Senior year in college, and then first year in graduate school, and it was literally one room in both situations, and they were dorm room and then a graduate student housing house. So I didn't even have. I had like surface control. I could pick I had a pink bedspread. I could pick the coverings of things. But the one in college, I had guinea pig. That was fun. She ran around. Oh. She ran around on the floor and would come to the door when I had lettuce when I went in. It's very cute.
Oh, it's cute.
Yeah.
They're like costly.
And that one, I was saying the room had this like build up that the previous inhabitants had put up when they'd like tried to share it. So there were two guys in the same room, and they'd made loft beds. So my single room in my senior year in college looked exactly like a Barbie dream house, like with the wrong walls and sort of levels and stuff like that.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
But that's no. And the thing is that I hadn't built so I've never had true, complete control over a domestic space.
Yeah, neither have I. I lived in share houses, or I lived like traveling back and forth between places, and no. I don't even know what that would look like. That's probably why I reacted to Ken taking over Barbie's house. I thought, she's got her own place. You get your own place. Why are you angry with her? Yeah, I just don't know what that would be like. No, I shared my house with my family and roommates.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So it's when you said
my hosting.
Go ahead.
Go
ahead.
My hosting's always been sort of co-hosting in that way, I suppose. Then.
Yeah.
Because it's not you're not hosting if you're not hosting in an environment that isn't totally yours, like that kind of Barbie. It's Barbie's house with Barbie's party and Barbie's guests.
Right.
Yeah.
But what you said and I pounced on a bit ago is that's just two people needing to share the space. And I said, well, okay, in the movie it's masculine and feminine, which is coded differently than just having to like agree on the arrangement of the furniture.
Yeah. Well, it's about the roles that both men and women play in the home. I suppose if you're thinking of it traditionally, women are working in the home and are working outside of it. So it's if you're in that kind of model, then a woman is constantly inside that place as her workspace and as her recreational space also, whereas men are going out to work and then returning into the space. That changes the way they're going to be enjoying the home, I think, because that's not their workplace.
So interestingly, I had one of the students on campus make the argument that men should be. She said she disagreed with me about something I was saying. I can't remember what it was. That she said no. I was talking about hypergamy, saying that women are hypergamous, and she said no, they're not. And I'm like, what? She says no, they're not. They're not getting their men to like take as much responsibility as they should and take part of the housework on. And I'm like, okay, that's but that would suggest that what Ken did is like, yeah, so here, look, I participated in the decorating, and I'm gonna, I took care of all the stuff in the house so that it's all arranged the way it needs to be, so that I'm partaking in the housekeeping.
But he didn't do that.
Yes, he did. He decorated it.
They didn't move in together. He literally kicked her out. I'm sorry. No, she was evicted. She was forcibly evicted.
No, he didn't. He just redecorated.
Oh.
She could stay there if she wanted, right? He wanted her to. They didn't know why, because they're toys. But right, the kid. I mean, that's the thing. The patriarchy Kens.
Wanted her there.
The patriarchy Kens are all teamed up with lots of Barbies, and the Barbies are taking care of them. I don't think they're necessarily leaving them homeless. It's just they're defining the space with horses.
No, but he didn't want her in there. He was angry with her and kicked her out of her house and didn't want her in there.
All right, so now we're parsing the particulars of exactly what that's. I think he was trying to teach her a lesson what it was like not being included. Therefore, I was on his side. See what that feels like.
All right, but no, that's a separate thing. Yeah, but that's a separate thing. I was dealing with them. You're asking someone who's autistic to deal with separate categories.
Yes, because you're clearly the only one who can understand them well enough to describe them, while the rest of us are just like, instinctively hostessing and not even realizing we did it.
That's why I'm weird, Barbie, and I stay in my weird house on the hill, and I don't talk to anyone unless they want to come to my house. Everybody's welcome. Ken, Barbie, I don't care, but I'm staying on the hill. don't want to leave.
Whereas I'm making place cards for everybody and making sure they sit next to each other so they can have nice conversations. And never considering that not everybody does this.
No, you're all being horrible to each other. So I can't handle it anymore.
Okay, but what I've
I've wrecked my makeup.
See what a good hostess I am. I get her talking. Okay, so
and I'm smudged. You see?
No, I'm not looking.
Well, it's
that's
really
very decorative. That's smudged there.
Good hostess. No,
see, I do it automatically. I didn't even think of that.
Mm-hmm. No.
I'm so happy to find I'm actually Barbie.
Right,
that's you have no idea what that does for me.
I'm fixing it as I'm talking about why Ken annoyed me and why he was mean and why they needed to fix it. Okay, so we've got. You're all gonna have to deal with this. You've got the legit. I made a mess.
You look lovely, dear. Don't worry about it.
It's gonna annoy me
Oh
though.
well, see, that's your weird Barbie. It's gonna bother you, and you're gonna fix it anyway. Even though I've tried to reassure you, we're doing such meta stuff in our stream tonight. It's great.
I know. Everyone thinks it's a.
This is live, you know.
Yeah,
recorded live.
I know.
In front of a studio audience.
They need to.
Very few.
No, they need.
The only people that are watching are Mel and Ken.
Mel
and Casey. Kim.
Okay.
Okay, so, Mel is saying I've never lived alone unless you count my tent. But even then, I'd beg for a roommate. Well, we know what that got you. But still camp next to a group of others. It got her an entire team of people. Okay, Codex was in here before, and I'm worried that there's a problem with the app. Or they were talking about which apps to use. Oh dear, I can't. I can only do so much tech in one go. All right, is your makeup all fixed now?
It's acceptable. Yeah. So, okay. So basically, the issue is like for me, it's two things, because there's no like. They're obviously Barbies and they're toys. They're not actually married and having families. So this is a big problem because we're kind of analyzing the roles at points that people are stuck in at a certain phase of life where they're just being singles that are hosting their parties at their houses with no consideration for family life. So that has to be factored in. The next thing is that the actual infrastructure itself didn't belong to Ken. No one knows where Ken lives. Maybe he was homeless, but actually the property belonged to Barbie, which he stole. Okay, now everybody knows why he stole it, because he felt left out. But that is the reason why it annoyed me. It wasn't the fact that he turned it into a horse barn, because obviously I like horses, so that's not a problem. But what he did was he hosted like a young single guy who wanted to have his cool friends over and have all the girls over in his place. That was it. That's basically all that happened. The horror in that switch is when he's making her Barbie feel horrible because she's not welcome at his little party inside her house. That's why it's horrible. Which is, I think, where the sensitivity comes in. Your sensitivity towards Ken is because you're seeing it from the angle that a lot of guys have the experience of feeling like they're kind of living in Barbie's house when they live with women. Yes. Yeah, which is a different thing again. And that is a real phenomenon, actually. Yeah. So
well, that men
we can get into that.
I mean, that we have this. I think we talked about this when we did it in the summer. We have this woman's defined world, which has no place for the men other than as props. And well,
that's not ideal, but that's what it has devolved into, I think.
Right. and that's why I was
Yeah.
sympathetic to Ken.
Yeah.
Women
Yeah.
that and the recovery in the movie of Barbie, Barbie world, and they get the vote was strange, right? That was a strange sort of idea. It's like, we can vote it and it'll change. And I'm like, okay, let me talk to you about the French Revolution. But that in the feminized world that Barbie is idealizing, there is no place for the men. That there is no role for them. And I'd say, as you're saying, he didn't build the house. Who did? Right? Where did these women's houses come from? I mean, it's like, so they're construction worker, and then the laughing at the men when they can't build the wall to keep Barbie world in and things like that. It's the I was sympathetic because I'm sympathetic to the problem of women's being incapable of recognizing what the men have done for them so that they can have these houses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's tragic. Yeah, we should definitely get into that. I wasn't overlooking that at all. So I just saw it as a fantasy.
Right.
It was like a little girl's fantasy of what kind of house she would have when she would grow up and etc. Because if you're a little girl, you shouldn't be thinking about Ken in the first place in any other capacity than as a Ken. No, really, I think it's kind of psychologically healthy thing. It's like annoying brothers and boys and all of this kind of stuff. Maybe that's just my perspective. The girls hit a certain age and then there's the shift and suddenly the boys are interesting for a different reason. You get into the complexity of male-female relationships, but for a really, really small girl, this is my dream house and that's it. So what you were looking at when you were seeing Barbie in that way was her idealizing the world without men being responsible for building the world around her.
Right.
And what I appreciate about that probably a lot of people didn't pick up on is that that's probably because Barbie had a really good father who did things so well that she didn't have to worry about who built the house.
Which is never addressed in the movie because they only have Ruth Handler as the character that creates it all.
Yes.
Who was, in fact, married and made the business with her husband. The Mattel of the is the men's names, right? Yeah. So and yes, and there's this this fantasy that the CEOs are all the guys. Yeah, they're the ones that are responsible for the fact that all those houses exist.
Yep. Yeah. And they've done such a good job at being men that nobody even thinks about their presence there, which sounds like I'm dismissing it, but I'm not. Like this is I think the I mean, at least from my perspective, it's that the men are so good at taking care of the women that the women aren't even factoring in what they're doing because of course they're going to be there. Of course the infrastructure is going to be there. Of course we'll get houses. Like this is the psychology of healthy women. They don't have to think about.
This is where I love. It's like you and your point. It's like we should be taken care of, and there should be a house, and I should get to be Barbie in it, and and yet.
Well, this sounds like I know people are going to hear me saying this and say, "Oh, you sound like a very entitled woman." No, I've seen the contrast in cultures. I've grown up between contrasting family systems and cultures and things like this, and so I can understand the difference between women that grow up in cultures where they're entitled, where they not even thinking about what the guys are doing in that sense, because of course men are doing stuff, because the men are functioning and they're healthy and they're thriving, which means the women thrive, which means the women are entitled to a dream house because duh, men are building stuff, versus women that have been put into Barbie land where Kens haven't been building anything, and then suddenly they're having to worry about infrastructure. And then they think about who builds everything and who's doing everything, and oh no, now I've got to do everything. So that's where my head is, like, in terms of the contrast. So Barbie's stuck in a little girl framework of like, I don't even have to worry about what the Mattel executives are doing because it's just there. She hasn't reached that phase or that stage where she's had to worry about it yet. But I think I understand completely what you mean, because what they did demonstrate was what happens when men are considered to be what's the word? In the way. That's a different thing. That's a completely different thing.
What we recognize is why we enjoyed the movie is it can take both directions.
Yeah,
but you can see it
yeah,
as I think one way we've talked about it is like when Ken takes over her house, it's more like your little brother moving into your room and rearranging your stuff.
yeah.
Like, get out! This is mine, right? Okay, so maybe we need to ask some other toys help, right? So this is Fencing Bear and her friends, and I think what Kilts, what you were just saying Barbie in fact lives in an idealized world where men actually do take care of things. Ironically.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way the sort of drama in the movie is set up is, the women should have their spaces and the men should not be invading them. But in the real world, and this is of course the irony of what's going on throughout the Barbie movie, is that women are the sort of feminist version of what's going on in Barbie is the women are in all the roles that the men have in real world. Like president and, construction worker and doctor and all of the other traditionally masculine roles, as we say.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the Barbie fantasy being that, the women are going to be able to run the world as well as the men run the world, which is I mean, this sort of interesting that Ken goes out into the world, sees the videos and reads the books and finds out patriarchy is great and he gets to have a horse. But the real question that the movie can't ask, wouldn't ask, completely fails to ask, and has Gloria give stupid, Academy nomination award winning speeches about, it's a contradiction. It's like, you never dealt with the actual contradiction, which is how does the world function? And if you simply had a world full of women doing all of the roles that were traditionally masculine, like the construction worker guys that are actually in the real world, how would it work?
It wouldn't.
Well, we need to prove this. Because very well, if we simply say that, well, if you were James Damore and said it at Google back in 2017, which is why I did this little cartoon that we're about to read with you, he got fired.
Yeah, poor James.
And also and interviewed by everybody on the quote right, including Jordan Peterson and. I mean, definitely Jordan Peterson and then some others, right? That it was, if you think back to summer 2017, everyone, there was an enormous kerfuffle. It's like, I know, it's like so pre-COVID. Enormous kerfuffle over Damore's making public, or no, it wasn't making public. He made a report answering some of the diversity and equity hiring initiatives that Google was trying. I don't even remember I didn't look it up. I didn't look up my own notes. I just remember I wrote this comic and did the pictures and everything with the toys in response to the furore that was up around his saying, and I think maybe he did say this, that men and women had different propensities in skill sets, could we say? Not just differences in hierarchy, but actually different ways of well, maybe I already layered it into what I see in this. It's called Lobstercide because I was still, in the lobster world, and he was interviewed by Peterson, so there was these lobster metaphors in it, and also that in my house, because of certain people's gaming practices, we had some Warhammer little lobstery things, so we used them as the games for the toys to play. Right. So shall we go through my toys investigation about what men and women do together? Are we there yet? I can say, okay. So here we go. We need to read this really carefully. All right. So toys in opening scene. There's the white bear, the the brown bear, the dragon, and a brown bear with a medal on. Yeah, and they've got the warhammer. I think they're warhammer, the little crabby creatures in front, and they've got some paper dice, a ruler, an airplane, and a 3-dimensional bust of me, which my husband made because he does 3D scans and then prints them. And so you can have to like study the video very carefully, or I'll put the link where this shows up on my blog up. It's called Lobstercide. The little bust is me in a 3D scan printed. So I'm virtually in this story, right? Okay, so White Bear is saying, are you sure you want to send them in first? Your Ashura is looking a little lonely out there. The bust of me is the Ashura. And the brown bear, the bigger brown bear says, okay, lobster guard finally in range. All right, so do you notice okay, you're not looking at it. If you pull up Lobstercide on your phone, you can look at this in real time. The color scheme in the scene in the comic at this point, right? It's completely grayscale. These things that matter, right? Okay, and here comes Brown, who is Fencing Bear, who says, "Can I play?" Right, so me, right? The sort of avatar of me. I'm doubly there. I'm in the 3D print as the Ashura playing piece, and the toy is me because that's Fencing Bear is my blogging avatar, and so therefore she, but dressed in her fencing, her masculine fencing outfit because it's got knickers and stuff, knee breeches, right? Says, "Can I play?" All right. The boys at this point make a tragic decision. The brown bear who has the medal on it, I called him Gentleman Bear in my head, and he says, "Sure. Have you played Nephropodice before? Nephropodice." The joke there is that's lobster. Okay, so have you played lobster dice before? And Fencing Bear, in my role as fencer, says, "Honestly, no, but I've always wanted to." And Gentleman Bear says, "No problem. I'll explain the rules. There are 3 unit types: infantry, statues, and tanks." And then the White Bear, whom you're going to start noticing has a particular kind of character, says, "Plus non-units like doodads and fornaces." And Gentleman Bear says, "Yeah, I'm getting to that." Okay, so the girl bear, the Fencing Bear girl, who's me, has come in and said, "Can I play?" And they said, "Have you played before?" And she says, "No, I haven't, but I'd like to learn." And so Gentleman Bear starts explaining the rules, and White Bear, who I think in the Beanie Baby lexicon is called Sugar Bear, but anyway, White Bear says, "Okay, but there's some other rules," and Gentleman Bear says, "No, I'm trying to make this so that she can understand, basically, right?" Okay, so everybody got that? Okay. All right, now, so we go to the next one, and we got zoned in on the actual pieces, right? Infantry, like these Lobster Guard, roll a 1/6/8 die when they engage. Statues, like this Ashura, roll a 3/5/7, except when they have a unique attack modifier, like the Ashura does. Yeah, but I'm explaining the basic rules first. Finally, tanks, like this Predator drone, roll a 2/4/9. And the Fencing Bear says, "I thought Predator drones were aircraft." Haha, yeah, it's weird. Okay, so Gentleman Bear is all along. Right, so Gentleman Bear, they're all the toys playing the game were all boys to start with, and the Gentleman Bear is very graciously explaining the rules to Fencing Bear and answering her questions and stuff. And the Sugar Bear keeps saying, "Okay, there's these other complications and stuff." And Gentleman Bear says, "No, I'm trying to get." He wants her to understand, right? So he's going to explain all the rules. So Fencing Bear says, "So which one is the strongest type?" And White Bear says, "There is no strongest type. Geez, those are non-transitive dice, understand?" And Fencing Bear says, "Okay, I think I'll just watch for a few rounds." Okay. So she's come in, she's asked the rules of the boys. One of the boys is like, "Okay, I'll explain all the rules." And the other one keeps saying, "But there are more rules and you're not explaining them all." And she's not going to get it all. I did have help writing this. It's not all just my genius. Okay. The white bear is saying next. No, I got to change screen. Okay, right. All your lobster guard are going to die now. Why didn't you put your Ashura in front? Whatever, man. That's the bigger brown bear. And okay, so now Fancy Bear is watching, and the other toys are continuing to play. And now Fencing Bear's twin comes in. This is we have a lot of twinning in Draco-Chemicus, which, you know, like between the Draco-Chemicus and the Draco-Chemicus, right? But you see, my desire for recognizing the problem of twinning is played out in the toys. Fencing Bear has a double, but this toy is dressed in a skirt, right? So and it's also like it's a historic fencing costume of the Austrian women's fencing team or something like that. Anyway, so History Bear, therefore the academic, comes in and says, "Hey, are you guys playing Nephropodice?" Okay, so asserting authority instantly by knowing the name of the game already. I'm sure, you know, I've come in. And Gentleman Bear says, "Yeah, you want to join?" And she says, "Sure, I've played before." Because this is the History Bear, right? Now, there's conversation around the game. And History Bear saying, "You should attack the predator with the Ashura." And Fancy Bear says, "I think it's out of range." Sugar Bear, "Yeah, I told him to move it." History Bear, "Come on, let him move it up. You don't have to be such a stickler. It's only 2 inches out." Sugar Bear, okay, so you realize what she just did now is like break the rules, right? It's because it's all played on a ruler, right? There's this big silver ruler in the screen in front of the toys, and the movements of the toys are all played. The pieces are all according to that ruler, and they're playing the non-transitive dice are a thing. I will like quiz the chat once I finish reading this if anybody understands what that means. But it does actually work. This game would actually work with those dice. So History Bear is saying, you know, why not just let it move? And Gentleman Bear now trying to mediate between the girls, saying, right, it doesn't matter, just let him move it. The background is also now shifting. It's getting a little less grayscale and turning dark. And now it's gone pink. Hey, History Bear! And now we have 3 pink bears. There's a clown bear, a red bear, and a pink mammoth. "Oh, hey, mammoth. What are you doing? Mind if we join you?" This, History Bear says, Sure. Mammoth, "Cool. Is this like a Dungeons and Dragons game?" Sugar Bear, "No, it's not like D&D at all." Mammoth, "Haha, okay. So teach us how to play." Now, Gentleman Bear tries to start explaining. "All right, there are 3 types of unit, each with its own kind of die." Mammoth, "That sounds unnecessary. Why not use regular dice? These ones look like they're made of paper." Gentleman Bear, "Don't worry, it makes sense once you get the hang of it." History Bear, "Normal dice would be easier to roll." Mammoth, "Just a second, I'll go get some normal dice." You to see what's going to happen to the game. They had dice specifically designed to work in the game, and the non-transitive dice. I should look at the chat and see whether anybody's caring to claim that they understand what non-transitive dice is. No, they're not even trying. It's like rock, paper, scissors. So the way the dice are designed in the ones that the boys are using, it will actually function as a game, and it will play out like rock, paper, scissors, where rock defeats paper. Wait, paper defeats rock, rock defeats scissors, scissors defeat paper, right? So they in the sense that therefore they're not A is greater than B is greater than C. They're not. It was mathematically true, right? It's the game was designed to actually work, right? And that ruler mattered, the pieces mattered, and everything. And now Mammoth, one of the girls, is saying, "I'm gonna get some prettier die." And now she's come back with them, and she's got all these multi-sided dice that they have from Dungeons and Dragons. And the Mammoth is saying, "How are these? I even got some with different numbers of faces in case we need to roll in other ranges." Because right, you want to be able to play a different game, right? And Sugar Bear going, "That doesn't make any sense. You don't have any idea how the game works." Mammoth saying, "Come on, we just want to play." And Gentleman Bear, "Just let them play how they want." Mammoth, "Yeah, let us play how we want." At which point Sugar Bear, the white one, says, "Fine, I'm out." And he takes the paper dice.
Yep.
The Clown Bear says, "Geez, what an asshole." And the Red Bear says, "No kidding." All right, now we're almost done. Okay, so now the background has gone pink and blue, purple and blue, right? Mammoth. All right, let's play. Tell us what to do, History Bear. Remember, History Bear was not in charge of this group, and now is, because when the pink ones came in, they asked her for permission, not the guys who actually originally playing the game. So the academic is the mediator between the women coming into the game. Right. History Bear says, "Okay, each of you pick one of these figures." Mammoth. "What are they?" History Bear. "It doesn't matter. Just pick one." Right. You remember the original was like they're different units, and it matters what they are, and they move differently, and you need the ruler, and there's a whole structure of the game here. And the girls have come in and said, "Well, we've got some, things that are easier to roll, and they're prettier, and here I've got them, and just let them play." If I had written this by myself, it would have been far bitchier. I promise you. And now we are in full Barbie color, because what I had at that time was some toys from American Girl toys, and so now they're no longer throwing the die just on the table. They've got a little poof that's like pink and yellow, and the background is all pink and yellow. Fencing Bear, you'll see whose side am I on, right? Because I'm both of them. Is sitting there thinking, I wanted to learn how to play Nephropodice. Gentleman Bear is sitting there thinking, I wonder where Rules Bear went. He was the white one was the one that carried the rules, right? He left. Right? So the no more rules. History Bear saying, now everyone rolls a die and the highest roll wins. The Red Bear says, haha, crap, I think I lost. Mammoth, it's okay. I think this game is just luck. Clown Bear, yeah, it's all just random. You'll probably win next round. The end. This is my analysis of all of these relationships, of what happens when men men have a particular kind of structure and they're working according to it, and the women come in. Now, did I read it slowly enough that all stuck? Do I need to go back over?
Yeah. No, it's stuck.
Okay. So what stuck?
We've had the reverse. We've had the reverse of Ken invading Barbie's Dreamhouse and turning it into Mojo Dojo Casa House. Yes. So, instead of having an invasion that prevents hostessing, we have an invasion which prevents any game from being played whatsoever. They've completely destroyed the game. Right. It's gone. There is no game.
And it was one that had rules and hierarchy. Now, with the women that have come in, is there no game now? I mean, say we destroyed the game that they were playing at the outset by way of these substitutions. One, fudge it, right? Oh, she can move it. It's just, the piece is only out 2 inches. Don't worry about where it is on the rule, right? And then, we can replace the pieces. It'll make, it'll be nicer. We can roll differently. And it's like, that doesn't fit the structure of what we were doing in the first place. Yeah. Right. And then pick one. It doesn't matter what the pieces are, because in fact, the structure was, hierarchical and oppressive in the first place. And now, and you realize that this does actually matter. Now they're just being inclusive.
There's no discrimination because they've removed measurement and rule.
Right. It's all happy. Gone. It's the colors are way happier in the background. It's not just grayscale anymore, right? It's a playful place. I wrote this 6 years ago, right? So the Barbie pink is feeling quite telling right now, right? But they are what matters to the girl toys is everybody gets to play. However, does everybody get to play if your goal is everybody gets to play?
Well, no, because they're not playing anymore. Because there's no game.
Right. There's the game. The
game is just to be inclusive. That's
the
it.
game is to be inclusive,
which isn't a game. That's not a game.
Well, it is a game. It's the women's game.
Well,
right. And what this was supposed to show was how one, and I was trying to think about this, and my co-author tried to make me less bitchy about it, because I was just so mad at this thought that as Fencing Bear, I wanted to learn to play Nephropa dice, right? Their rules, I want to follow them. I want to watch and learn what they are. I'll sit back until I understand the game, and then I want to play it competitively with the people that are playing it to start with.
Mm-hmm.
But I also recognize that my twin there is me too. That as an academic, I come in and I have changed. I don't teach in a classroom the same way my male colleagues do. I know this. I've observed, I've observed men in the classroom. They have a different feel, a different dynamic, and and the thing is, I do think men and women can both teach each other in our academic setting, but they're different games, right? The thing that the girl toys care about most is, you'll probably win next round, right? It's like there's no like stable hierarchy being created by racking up wins. Each of them gets to win.
Yeah. Well, they don't care about proficiency. They don't care about the skill building. Nothing that these pink toys have done has referenced skill building. Right. Because you don't need to be skilled to be inclusive in the same way that you need to be skilled to win at a game that it has a rule set that's based on measurement and transitive dice, which have now been removed.
Right. Now the dice they just feel random. And this also that they don't feel like, with the transitive dice, there was a clear winner in each throw, right? This beats that. With the pretty dice that they're throwing, they're enjoying manipulating the toy, the devices, right? They're enjoying feeling like they're playing a game, but they've all agreed that it's not going to be competitive in the same way.
Yes. So the game, the rules of the game, that changes. The dynamics of the players changes. The whole thing is completely replaced. The need for there to be winners and losers to it's kind of a feeling reward system, isn't it? Everybody gets to win, so it's like, yeah, you don't worry, we won't say that you lost. You just didn't win this time.
Right.
It's very subtle, and it's based on the emotional outcome.
All of it. This, as Casey's saying, the women were inventing playing a different game, a game of manners.
Right? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was trying to think about it, and I was also, I was giving credit to the gentleman bear with his medal, right, is completely welcoming when all of the girls show up, right? He's like, Fencing Bear shows up, and she says, "Can I play?" And he says, "Absolutely, I'll explain the rules for you." Men do that, right? It's like the women come, and you're watching some men are frustrated, like the rules bear, right? And they're like, "Oh golly, no, that's not the real rule. Don't make it simple. I want to, but there are men, which I sympathize with all of these characters, right? I am here. I have some production shots, right? Here are the toys that didn't make the cast. Looking at the cast on set, right? The thing is, I sympathize with Rules Bear. I sympathize with the ones that are just wanting to play the game. I sympathize with Gentleman Bear wanting to be, chivalrous and explain to Fencing Bear what's going on. I sympathize with History Bear feeling like she knows what's going on because she knows the rules. I sympathize with why the pink toys show up, and the Gentleman Bear still wants to include them, even though instantly they haven't asked him for permission, even though he's the one that's in charge. They've asked History Bear, right? It's like, I get absolutely every one of these moves, but by the end of it, the game is completely different.
Yes. The boys aren't playing anymore.
They're not playing their game anymore. And so they can stay and play in the Barbie house, the one the girls are playing, but it's not the one they were wanting to play. It's not the one that Fancy Bear actually did want to play, even though she also like helped the rot by being there in the first place, that the other women showed up. Right. And in the end, right, the social game is also a real game of, inclusion and graciousness and friendliness. Hostessing.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's the difference between the two houses, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And this is one, the reason I did this is the thinking about Damore getting into so much trouble with his memo about, I think men and women having different strengths. I think that's what he said. I think that's what I was trying to say. It's like, it's true, right? Men and women play different games. They have different strengths. The men's game is one thing. It's not something that most women like playing, although some will. The women's game has other strengths. Most men are less interested in playing that one. Okay, but they'll be polite about it. But they do tend to cancel each other out. And the sort of challenge, I mean, the Barbies don't figure it out, right? The Barbies kick the Kens out and they get their houses back, and they kick all the men out, and the Kens have their great battle on and then Ken gets to be Kenuff, and it's like, none of this is satisfying. Because from my perspective, you haven't solved the need to acknowledge the different games, which was the point of doing the cartoon with the toys.
Yeah.
These are different. They do cancel each other out. You can't expect the women's game not to affect the men's game and have all things stay equal. Like, introduce a lot of women into a social dynamic. They're going to change the game.
Yes. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. We do. But also the difficulty in what's happened is that we've been told that we need to play two games at the same time, which you can't do.
They're different games, right? So women, if they want to play the men's game, it's like those of us like Mel, who's done a lot of masculine sports like hockey and skiing and such, or me in fencing, right? I do believe in women's sports, but I believe in women's sports as women are not, like, when we compete as fencers, we're separated by sex, because women are not as strong. We're not as fast. We don't have the same physical endurance. The men that when they go from being toykins to mankins, right? They're stronger. They're faster. You can tell the difference in a year between you're fencing an 11 or 12-year-old young boy and a man who you will never again beat in your life. Sorry, it's like it does. There's a real transition in their physical skill level and in their reaction time and all sorts of things. These are not commensurate, and it doesn't matter. I mean, sure, stronger women fencers can beat, not as strong men fencers, but the strongest men beat all of the women.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like the mystery of why we're supposed to pretend that that's not the case. It takes the fun out of the game for everybody. It's like, yes, women should, if we compete against each other in men's games, it helps if we have our own subset of women competing against each other in men's games. This creates enormous troubles in academia, and my fellow warrior in this particular conversation, Tony Easelin, gave a wonderful paper at a conference I gave a paper at the next year in 2018 at this Touchstone conference, and he was talking about the need for opportunities for incredibly genius boys, right? But very skilled boys to have opportunities to actually stretch themselves in competition. Stop bringing them down in physical and mental and reaction time stuff to trying to turn them into women, they're going to go off and do different things. And women are going to go off and do different things. The Barbies get to have their dream houses, but the boys also need to have their adventure skill space, where the non-transitive dice actually matter and the ruler actually matters.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Or it drives them insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have to have the space. And it could look completely different to different men in different games, but the point is that they get to have their game with their dice. Yeah. And if they don't stretch themselves, they'll never fulfill their destiny as men. I mean, there's a big problem with the resentment, I think, that comes from boys having to be around people that are not allowing them to do this.
Mm-hmm.
That resentment is it's not understood by a lot of women that are at the brunt of it, that are at the receiving end of it. But it's because they don't understand that in taking over these games and turning them into the female game for too long, they've handicapped the potential of a lot of the boys that have been around them, who then become the men that are around them as well.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm thinking, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking of the difficulty too in what happens when particular kinds of boys need particular kinds of stimulation in order to engage themselves properly and to achieve the levels of extension that they need. Like my the games the boys played when I was growing up may be a little extreme, but it was like it was interesting to see how that kind of behavior could not be imitated by women if they tried. And it's an interesting thing
Right.
that the kind of risk taking that they did is almost like these kinds of boys were the type to find the thing that couldn't be invaded and couldn't be managed by girls that were turning it into a social game. Which I tend to think a lot of a lot of these young men that are failing to find an area for them to extend themselves in end up in interesting places doing interesting things.
Well, certainly the risk taking clearly. So Mel has commented on saying, I hate playing men's hockey and checking into the boards. Women hockey is way more fun, but I like co-ed pickup when no checking into the boards is allowed. Exactly. To let the women play, you have to modify the rules from the men's game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's nice if they do it occasionally just to let us have a go.
Right. Yeah. No, we practice with the men at fencing, right? But Mel says 3 different games. It's 3 different games: the women's game, the men's game, and the mixed game. And as we showed last time, I mean, the queen ultimately wants the mixed game because she wants them getting married. Right. So yes, bring them together and they can dance, right?
Yeah.
The thing that men and women do particularly well together, right? They sort of dance. We're good at that together. So
yes,
this has been and I find this ironic. I was describing myself in academia earlier, knowing that we would get here, and thinking about I like teaching the way that I do. It would be wrong of me to insist that everybody teach the way I do. Right. And in my teaching, I've also had to train graduate students in teaching, and I can say it's like, I do this. If you practice what I'm doing in this group setting and pay attention to these kinds of dynamics and cues and performances and such, that's great, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll have strength if you follow my instructions. But I've also told them, and I always tell them, you have to find your own strength of performance. Some, some men are incredibly calm as teachers, right? They're fascinating for me to watch because I'm still like nervous, not nervous, and
Mhm.
I am nervous because I'm like performing, but um, I'm I get hyper energetic. I get very, my hands are waving around a lot. You know, I've seen men teach incredibly effectively, very calmly. They're the guy who'll just sit there, speak very quietly and such. And it's like, if I tell him you're a bad teacher because you're not like as expressive and waving your hands around as much as I, that's wrong. He may be actually really
Mhm.
good and have an intensity and difference that is either, you know, not everybody can learn from every teacher, but um, being able to be a good teacher as you matters a lot. Now, extend that to women are going to have different strengths. Individual women obviously have this, that, and the other strengths. Men are going to have different strengths. The whole equity claim that we're all, you know, we all have to be like leveled in the same is hurting everyone.
Yeah, it is. It is. You're putting weights on people that could be flying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best way I could describe it. I mean, I grew up with some very brilliant young men who were not allowed to extend themselves properly, and they were disabled in many ways because of the strictures that were placed on them from this kind of requirement for equality.
And a requirement to make all of the boys, I'll go back to the, actually no, the toys are still, this is the last scene, right? They're
Yeah, and
to
to make other
sit around the little colored poof and throw the dice, and you know, isn't actually a challenge. Because that's what you do in,
yeah,
I mean, I certainly have seen it through, you know, elementary school or you know, lower school where fine, the goal of the teachers is to get the kids to interact together well. Great, right? So
yeah,
there's a socializing element there, and that, as in unauthorized and Sigma game world, is what was just on Fox's blog today, saying, oh, you know, people, new people to the community don't know how to behave, and you have to put signs up in the subways to make sure that they don't do things in public that they're not supposed to do. How do you think people learn that? Right? We're
yeah,
constantly training each other in manners. And of course, you know, your mother
yeah,
should have taught you, right? Your mother should have taught you how to behave politely in public society. Okay. That means, you know, women are teaching children to behave in these mixed social settings. Good.
mm-hmm. Yes,
I mean, it is good.
but it is. Oh yeah, hopefully. um, yeah, in terms of their manners towards each other, of
Right.
course. But I think this is then that's the social aspect. But factoring in men's need for competition as part of their socialization is really important as
Right.
well. Yeah.
And that's why I see the Kens didn't ever get, right? It's like they wanted to be, and it's like they end up in the great beach battle, right? They wanted to have that
Oh
competition.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
their moment. It's like, this is great. We're on the
yeah,
beach. I'll see you on the Malibu beach. Yeah.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Boys, you put a set of boys in the backyard with foam swords. That happens.
Mhm. Yeah. um, it's interesting because I've heard a lot of people over the years talking about their kids and everything, and it's a difficult thing because uh, women are nurturers, hopefully, if they're good at what they're doing, and it's difficult to be listening when you hear about boys being horrible to one of the other boys and things. I think a lot of women are stepping in to prevent uh, their sons from meeting the challenge of facing a hierarchical struggle as well, um, which I mean it handicaps them again because they can't if they can't do that when they're developing and getting used to that kind of contest, their confidence doesn't develop in the way that it
Right.
needs to. They don't know what they're capable of because they've been prevented from contest for too long. Yeah.
And women, you have to be worried. So here is me manipulating the toys, right? And if you look in this picture, I'm setting the toys up, and I had to, like, arrange them for each of the scenes in the comic and put them in. It's like, and I had all of the pieces. This is early in the story when Fencing Bear is there and the boys are there, and they're the playing pieces there with the drone and the lobster things and the Ashura.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something missing in this shot of me manipulating the toys. It's the ruler, which was part of the game, which was necessary, but it was this big flat silver, like, drafting ruler, so it was really heavy and big. And I'd taken it out because it didn't look good.
Yeah.
So get to the meta level right, and my co-producer came in and said, "Where's the ruler? You wrecked the game. It doesn't work as a story without the ruler." And I went, "Ooh." Even when I'm scripting it, I can't prevent myself from fiddling with things. Cautionary tale. Right, it's so funny that I realized, like, I moved it because it didn't look good in the shot, and it was literally structurally essential to the whole game that the toys were playing. That I was making a comic about how women wreck the game. Being me is so, like, meta all the time. I'm also very sad that we don't have very many people watching today. Let me see how many people are in Telegram. How many we invited them all to come in. Oh, well, there's a few more in Telegram. This is like Battle of the Sexes gold, people.
Yeah.
We need each other. We play different games. We will upset each other's games simply by doing what feels right to us for the good reasons, right? Which was, I think, also what the ultimate point of the comic was to try to get it to the point where you saw that there were two different games, so that that the stakes of trying to pretend that there's only one are very, very high.
Oh, they are. They can completely destroy a moment of a formative moment for somebody in either situation.
Right. The girls were not wrong to want their pink, pretty social game. The boys were not wrong to want their grayscale, hierarchical game with rules. They just weren't the same game. And the gentleman bear and the fencing bears in there mediate between, it's like wanting people to belong, wanting people to be brought in, and not taking sufficient consideration. I mean, the thing is, I do think in Barbie, in the movie, they do try to play that out a bit, which is why I was so sympathetic to Ken in that moment. We saying, how does that feel, right? What is it like when you find out that the thing that you were wanting is gone? What do you think I feel like as Ken, realizing that there was this whole other thing that I could have been doing, which I never even knew existed? I felt that so much for the boys that are going through our feminized schools and saying, you are not allowed to have a horse, metaphorically or really.
Yeah, see, it's interesting. We have exactly the same empathy. I just have I just came at it from a different angle. Yeah, because I think because I've been in Barbie land where the Barbies haven't been hostess, they've been like pseudo Kens for too long. So I'm like, oh, she's got her house. Don't take it from her.
We'll give her back her house. But we've looped around. Oh no, it's gone again. We'll give her back her house. There she is.
No, the boys have been utterly retarded by a lack of competition with each other.
Yes.
I don't mean retarded in, but they've been held back. The real meaning of the word in retard, it means you're late, you're delayed. It's not like a permanent cripple. You can get there eventually, but the point of the tussling, the point of rough play for young boys is so that they can extend themselves and get out all of that energy and actually test themselves and test the people that are around them. And that's a really important part of trust building for men as well. It's why they haze each other.
Right.
Women don't haze to build trust, but men do. They need to be able to do it. And I mean, so many different things that are necessary for the development of boys into healthy and strong men has been taken away from them because of inability for them to play the games that they need to play to get there. Yeah.
The thing is,
and they get punished. They
yes.
get punished for wanting. They get punished for wanting what they need, and I empathize with that very much because I've had the opposite experience.
Right.
So it works on a level where you're kind of you're expected to your behavior is expected in order to be perceived as a polite person or someone who's well mannered, when that behavioral expectation is actually quite toxic for your own sociosexual development. And yeah, it's horrible. Like I understand what you're saying, Doc. I have empathy for the boys for what they're lacking. Yeah.
And the thing is, I think women put into the men's structures suffer too, right? Which is the thing that so I've been in men's structures my whole life, as it were, in academia. Back when I was in college, it was almost, well, I mean, the university where I went to college had women in it from its opening class in 1912. So it was never, not that there was never any women, or that it only just gone co-ed and we were getting used to it. But when I was hired here at Chicago, there were 5, 6, 7 women. I can't remember how many there were in a department of 35 or so. So I know what it was like being a woman in the men's group. But that, in that sense, I remember what it was like for me, like as the first fencing bear with mainly men in a structure that they were competing in, which I was happy to, but I also know that I behaved differently. I was still not the same game, but I liked being in their setting. Yeah. But I think also because, as Mel has pointed out, like they took what is she calling the checking into the boards, right? This is also recognizing that the men at fencing don't fence us as hard. They scale down to know that they're fencing you, right, as a woman. And also I'm like an old woman, so I have to scale down a lot, right? The men are adjusting all the time for us to be in their masculine space. But that's, that I don't, my frustration about being hostess or not having as much access to the women's, or I don't know, right? Women need the women's space too. And that's what you were responding to, saying Barbie's Dreamhouse was appropriately hers and he shouldn't have taken it from her. We're all suffering in this situation where the women don't get to properly understand that their women's space is good and matters and creates a very important element of our society, which is the court and the socialization and the men and women getting to dance. And the men need their space as well, where they get to play the risk games and the creating of hierarchy, and what you're describing, like testing themselves against each other so that they understand their own capabilities.
Yes.
And how
which are
go ahead.
I was going to say they're far beyond what women are capable of.
Yes, Mel is here, verifying it. Men's snowboarding versus women's can't get spin or as much vert. Yeah. Different judging categories. Mm-hmm. They have to be separate or women can't compete. Yeah.
I'll give you an anecdotal example if it works. So boys where I was when I was growing up, they used to do high diving. It was like a big deal to get on that platform. You literally, it couldn't be a more perfect example of the SSH for men, because they'd literally level up in terms of the meters off the ground to go diving and then get in the pool. And then you get to the highest point in the tower where you're up at 10, 12 meters sometimes. And then they're diving from that point, and then they have to start doing trick diving. And so they're just pushing each other constantly.
Right.
How much more can we get out of this one trick before we die? And that's what it was like.
Yeah.
We go up with them sometimes just to watch. The women are incapable of getting to that level where they're trick diving and they're doing the stuff that the boys are doing, but we'd stand back and we'd watch them do it. Sometimes their faces would come within that much of the concrete slab that they were jumping off, and then they'd clear it.
Yeah.
And they'd be doing things that are like phenomenal to watch. They're like, for amateur gymnastics, it was amazing. And one of these guys, he smacked his head one day. He was bleeding and his blood all in the pool. It was gross. So he had to get stitches. He was out of the pool for 2 weeks. I'd never seen anybody so frustrated in my life, to be taken out of the competition, to be taken out of the pool and be told, no, you have to stay out of it because your head's not going to heal properly. Right. So it was 2 weeks of hell. 2 weeks and 1 day stitches come out. The day the stitches came out, he was back on the board doing the exact same trick that he'd done, that split his head open, and he did it again.
He split his head open again.
He split open his head again. And he didn't want to be out of the game again. So he said, I'm not going to the doctor. I'm not letting them stitch me up. I'm going to stay up the top of the tower and keep going. That's the headspace. It's this like singular obsessive impulse to keep going, regardless of what's just happened. And that kind of stuff you don't see in any other environment unless you're around boys that are playing the game that they need to fulfill themselves. It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, but also you do the opposite and put a woman on that platform and tell her to do the same thing. You damage your Barbies.
Yeah.
The culture that we live in now has this very strange schizophrenia of saying, no, we don't want the boys doing the dive from the highest level because it's too dangerous. But they'll push girls to be at the level that they think is boys and say we can do exactly what the boys can do or better. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, what you just described is the lie of their premise, right? It's like the only way you can get girls to that level of the boys is to cripple the boys.
Yeah.
While depriving the women of doing the thing that they're actually going to be better at. As training us in our feminine skills. It's been a puzzle for me, because back when I was in college and we were doing gender studies, there was a book by a famous gender studies professor called In a Different Voice, Carol Gilliam, who got critiqued for decades, right? Saying whether women's moral development was different or not. And it's like what was funny was they used a masculine scale to decide that women were not as morally developed, and you're like, okay, problem to start with. I like my scale better. It's like they're playing different games, and this continuous refusal to acknowledge that men and women can be good at certain kinds of games together. We need to, in order to have a society and babies. Women can be very good at things, skilled at things that men are completely uninterested in, which is why they're not live, here in our live chat tonight. And men can be obsessively interested in things that bore women to tears. Oh, the guys are watching football again. Why? Right? The only time I ever watched football was with my dad, because I wanted to sit around with my dad, right? So we're just here in the Mosaic Ark to make a plea for sanity. Men are men and women are women, and that's both good.
Right?
Yeah. Why is it so hard to say that? And why, when you say that, do you suddenly get called hateful? It's like, which is what happened to Demore with all it was in the pronoun days, right? When it was hateful to not pretend that mammals are come in two sexes, and that's why you end up with more of them. They come together and make houses together and have little ones, which the toys can't because they're toys.
Yes. You want them to leave the toy phase. That's the idea.
Well, and we prevented them from ever getting out because we've been pretending this. Yeah. Okay.
Well, they've been they have been prevented from getting out.
Oh, okay. So perhaps unauthorized hasn't been loading correctly. Yeah, okay. There's a minor amount of chat in DCR Telegram. we will consider that later. We promised with the unfortunately not streaming properly, but hopefully recording properly on authorized TV. It's been a quiet night.
Yes.
In our girls' room, in our Mosaic Ark pink and Barbie colored girls' room of unauthorized TV, which is all men otherwise, mostly.
But it's a different room.
We have our
which
own
is
completely different room that.
Yeah.
Watch. Yes. So this is part 2 of the continuing series on the women's sociosexual hierarchy, which we have now established what hostess means, but that it's going to have different roles in different situations, and we haven't solved the problem of how they live together yet. There's more to come. Don't worry. So like and subscribe. If you subscribe to Unauthorized TV, to Logos and Tolkien, you help our art and our work, and help us carry on being beautiful in our home. And I think my plan is we do Female of the Species next time. How women are nasty to each other. so if you weren't enraged yet, we'll aim to go there. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I don't know.
Like I said, I'm not hosting. I'm vibing. Right, yes. I'm just enjoying this.
No. I'm as a hostess, I always aim to make sure that everyone has a lovely time. I hope you all had a lovely time tonight. Thanks for joining us.